Sara is the founder and CEO of Children First Canada. She has led the creation of the Canadian Children's Charter. She is awarded not once, but twice the top 25 women of influence. And in 2017, she was inducted into the top 100 most powerful women Hall of Fame. And maybe most importantly, or so we think, she is the Women's Empowerment 2024 Leadership Award recipient. Welcome to our podcast, Sara Austin.
Thank you so much, Annie. It's so good to be with you.
And
I think I feel a great sense of joy and privilege to be able to do work that I love. I mean, the awards are lovely, but really, it's like the greatest reward is being able to make a difference in the lives of children. And I'm grateful for the recognition and the affirmation. But really, I just try and do what I was put on this earth to do, which is to stand up for kids and to help kids stand up for themselves.
And your mission is simple in words, is make Canada the best place that kids can grow up in.
Yeah, I think it's something we can all get behind. And I think, if anything, I encounter people say, but are we already, a world leading country for kids? And, I think it's a tough conversation because we perceive Canada to be a world leader in so many ways for democracy, for protection of human rights, for wealth and prosperity. But clearly the data shows that Canada is falling behind when it comes to protection of our children. We rank 67th on the Global Kids' Rights Index. That is far from being a world leader. And so Children First Canada, I established it to really try and turn that around, to unite our country around a vision of what's possible and to mobilize action in the lives of our children.
So what inspires you to do this? This is a lot of work. This is a big task that you've taken on. What inspires you day to day?
I'm inspired by the idea that every kid deserves to have the best opportunities in life. Their fate should not be determined by their postal code, and wherever they live in Canada, from coast to coast to coast, they have the rights to nutritious food, to a loving and caring family, a safe home to live in, clean water to drink, to be protected from violence and discrimination in all its forms. I think every kid deserves these things. I know that they have the right to these things, but we know that as a country, we're falling short. And part of what gives me hope is that kids aren't waiting for us to solve these problems. They are taking action in their homes, in their schools, in their communities, and all the way to Parliament Hill. And they need our support. They need us as parents, as educators, as business leaders, and as policymakers to do our part to ensure that they can survive and thrive.
And what struck me when we were at the luncheon is how many children that were making a difference, that were actively standing up and actually planning their own charter.
Yeah, 100%. Canada has 8 million kids, and our mission encompasses each and every one of them. Everyone has a name and has the right to be seen and heard and valued. And our work at Children First Canada, while we're a small organization, we're making a big impact on the lives of kids from coast to coast to coast. They've been involved in shaping everything that we do, from creating the Children's Charter, which is really the roadmap to defining the problems that they face as kids today, but also the solutions that exist in mobilizing action. These kids have grown up with our organization. Many of them have gone on to serve in the Prime Minister's office, to go into
Wow.
the private sector, into medicine, and many different fields where they're now, serving in leadership positions where they're able to take action. But they've really helped to create the roadmap for action and holding our leaders to account to mobilize the action that they so rightly need and deserve.
Now, in this 20 years, when you look back, what do you think is your greatest achievement, your greatest win?
Ah, so
So many, so many.
there. One of the things I'm most proud of is having led a global campaign to pass an international law that allows children the ability to hold their governments accountable when their rights are denied. It really emerged out of work that I did in the beginning of my career in Asia and Africa, Latin America, when I was defending the rights of kids who lived in extreme poverty, who were enslaved in child labor and
Wow.
experienced trafficking, and who experienced the absolute worst violations of their rights, and yet had no recourse to hold their government accountable, and had no voice at global tables like the United Nations. I did my master's of human rights law to see how could we change the game for children. Launched a campaign at the United Nations, and led that campaign for many years and stood at the United Nations in 2014 as that law went into force. It's since been used by young people like Greta Thunberg and children and youth
Wow.
all around the world to hold their government's feet to the fire around the right to sustainable future, to have adequate nutrition, and to have adequate healthcare, and so many other issues. For me, it's not having ticked the box that this thing now exists. It's because my sense of pride is that children have this right to be seen and heard. They now have access to the tools they need to hold their governments accountable. And I feel, really privileged to have been a part of that.
Now, when you think about all this work you've done, what sets you apart? What do you think is your superpower, your secret sauce? Because you're
Yeah.
so good at this.
I don't know. It's really hard to define it. I just get up each and every day doing what I feel like I was put on this earth to do. I have this deep sense of calling to stand up for children and help kids stand up for themselves. And I'm not afraid to just, I think, be bold and be courageous in demanding these things for our kids and to ask for what I think these kids deserve. It's sometimes, we've had to take risks as an organization or for me as an individual, to call out injustices when they happen, and to hold people accountable, people in high positions of authority. But it's the right thing to do, and so I have this. I think I stay true to my values. The sense I'm grounded by what I believe is right and my values, my faith as well. It just is an anchor for me. I'm not doing this for myself, for fame or for fortune by any means. It's really just trying to do the right thing for our children.
You've had a lot of success, obviously, with all the accolades and obviously all these children that are doing better because of you. Their trajectory has changed. How would you define success?
For me, success is change in the lives of our
Mm,
children. Life should be getting better for our kids, not worse. And I really struggle with this one because in
mm,
many ways, life for our kids is getting measurably worse. Every year
mm.
we put out a report called Raising Canada that looks at the state of our nation's children. The new report is just coming out right now, and the data is deeply alarming. It points to a generation of Canadian children who are at risk because of epidemic levels of abuse, child poverty,
No.
poor mental health, the impacts of climate change, online harms. I could go on and on and on about the ways that life for kids is getting measurably worse. But I take a lot of hope because I know I see that change is possible. We've helped to bring about really meaningful changes in the lives of children just in the past 10 years that Children First Canada has existed. In the past year alone, we've seen the government invest $1 billion in a new national school food program that will feed kids from coast to coast to coast. Kids are heading back to school right now. They're going into their classrooms, and many kids go in without a breakfast or a lunch. But this new investment will mean that many kids who need these
Hmm.
meals will have them thanks to the work that we've been doing. We've helped achieve a new, $500 million youth mental health fund that will,
Well,
flow funding across this country to ensure that kids have better access to mental health care when they need it, and particularly in times of crisis. Those are just a couple of tangible changes we've helped to bring about. But, for me, day in and day out, I get to meet and work with amazing kids who are bold and creative and courageous, who are not waiting for us to do something for them. They're taking action. They're simply asking for us as parents and educators and citizens to do our part to stand by them and to help ensure that we can really bring about change in their lives.
go again. When you look back at all your successes, is there a favorite quote that resonated with you that stands out?
One quote that really inspires me is that when you become who God created you to be, you will set the world on fire. For me, I just get up every day and try and pursue the sense of vocation and calling I have in my life to be a champion for children. And I think the same is true for each and every one of us. We all have different things that set us, that sort of light that fire within us, that get
Mm.
excited, what that we're passionate about, and that we're good at as well. And when we align that sense of purpose and our skills and our passions to make a difference in this world. You can do that in so many different ways as a teacher, as a parent, as a business leader, as a policymaker. There are so many different ways we can make a difference. And I just, I try and pursue that sense of calling on my life. And I think when you do, amazing things will happen around you.
But do you remember a time in your career, in your life, that you had like a TSN turning point, that something changed and you knew you had to do this?
Hmm. For me, it was really this decision to start Children First Canada. I had worked for nearly 20 years as a global advocate for kids, driving change in Asia, Africa, Latin America, the United Nations, and really making a difference in the lives of kids who living in extreme poverty and exploitation. But after having led that global campaign for children at the UN, having fought many years to bring that into to force, I really had a reckoning around what was happening in the lives of kids here in Canada. Uh, the Canadian government had actually fought that law at the United Nations tooth and nail. Canadian government was one of the staunchest adversaries around getting that passed.
Wow.
And I was ashamed at the time to be a Canadian, to see my government fighting something around the protection of children's rights to be seen and heard. But also, I was seeing the data that was showing that kids were falling behind. Canada used to be
Mm.
ranked in the top 10 countries for children. We had fallen far behind at that point. I was a new mom as well. I had a baby boy who was experiencing significant health issues, and we were having to navigate a really complex health system that
Mm.
wasn't always there for us when we needed it. And I thought, here I am, advocating for change for kids all across the country, but I'm struggling as a parent to provide the things that my child needs, let alone so many other families are struggling with around poverty or mental health issues and so many
Right.
other things. And it was really having to come to terms with watching my country falling behind in its protection of children's rights. As a parent, seeing my own child struggling and knowing that we could do so much better. And so it was a turning point for me to look to what I could do in my own backyard and to bring together leaders and organizations around this united vision for our children. And Children First Canada was born with this ambitious mission. And it's been a really exciting 10 years of driving change for kids here in Canada.
As they say, it's born out of necessity. When you need it, you create it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not for the faint of heart, starting a new charity.
Yeah.
Starting a new
With
charity.
a
I can tell
newborn.
you all the reasons why not to do it. I mean, there are many amazing organizations that exist to serve and support children from, across our country. But it was really through speaking with organizations like Kids Help Phone and the Boys and Girls Clubs, with Sick Kids Hospital, and with business leaders from RBC and TELUS and many others, people who cared about our children, who were doing their best, but who all saw a gap that existed and a need for us to come together with this united voice. And so that we know there really was a gap to be filled, and we've been able to work together to make really meaningful changes.
Now, at this time, I'm sure a lot of people come to you for mentoring, and they're always probably asking you for advice. What advice do you give people or kids that want to get into your line of work, into mentoring, into changing the lives of children?
Yeah, I think it's one of the parts of my job that I love most is being able to speak
Ah,
with young people who are thinking about what to do with their life. When I was a little girl, I didn't pursue or consider this as a career option. I know I was thinking about many different other things in my life, but I was passionate about these issues. I was active in fundraising and advocacy, but I didn't actually know this was a career path. I think things have significantly changed, and young people now know that they can go into whether it's working in a charity or in the health sector or leading a charity or not for profit. And one of the pieces of advice I often give young people is to really have that sense of alignment. What are you passionate about? What
mhm.
are you good at? And what is the need in the world that you're trying to fill? I know you really need those alignment. You can be really passionate, but not very good at it. And so that's not really going to be a great fit for
Fit.
you. What is
Yeah.
that? What is something, that great fit, that sweet spot in the middle of the world's needs, your skills and your passion.
Now, there's always, as they say, someone who's inspired you, empowered you. Is there three women in your life that you can think of that have affected how you go about your life, have empowered you?
Three women. Yes, I could come up with a long list, but yeah, I could certainly name three women. One was a woman named Linda Tripp. She was a woman I knew from a very young age. She was a leader in my church when I was a young girl. She inspired amazing action on the part of our church and was, I think, for me, a role model around pursuing justice and doing what was right for children. When I graduated from university, she took a risk on me. She hired me as an intern, sent me off
Oh,
to Thailand, and gave me many chances in my career to opened doors for me to pursue the sense of passion and to be a champion for kids. And I will be forever grateful for the doors she opened for me. There's a woman named Anna Lopez, who used to be the chair of the CAMH Foundation in Toronto. She was a mentor for me through the WXM's Top 100 Women program. And, she came into my life at a time when I was really thinking about, where I was at that stage in my career. How could I navigate to the next level of my leadership? And she turned to me at one point and said, Sarah, you need to take more risks. I
Wow.
considered myself a risk taker. I had taken risks my whole life in many different ways, but she had the insight to see at that point of my life, I'd become much more risk averse. I was a new mom. I had been
Mhm.
comfortable in my career. I had certain, I just, in some ways, just become, yeah, much more risk averse. And she really encouraged me to take the leap. And her advice was really pivotal in my decision ultimately to launching Children First Canada. And I would say, I would be remiss if I didn't say my own mother, who's, a really courageous and brave woman who is always stood up for doing the right thing, particularly for children. She taught me from a very young age that as adults we shouldn't just care for our own kids. We need to care for all of our children,
Mhm.
and that even very young kids can make a difference. And so she was a role model for me as a kid, and has really taught me as a mom to help empower kids to stand up for their peers and to help ensure that all of our kids thrive.
I hope our kids are listening. Remember to say this about us, right?
Yeah.
Define empowerment. How would you define that?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I think it's really knowing that I think it starts with knowing that you actually have worth and that you have
Mm.
inherent worth and have something meaningful to contribute. Because we often think about empowerment as giving something to somebody else, but you
Mhm.
actually have the power within you. And so it's actually having the courage to claim that and to act on it. Um, it can be really challenging to speak up in your workplace or your classroom or to hold leaders accountable, but you have that power within you. You have that voice, and so speak up even if your voice is trembling. I think it's a Madeleine Albright quote that about really being able to speak up even if your voice is trembling, because it's powerful to be able to claim your voice and to use it.
Right. And if you don't ask, you don't get. I always tell my children, right? You
Right.
need to,
Yeah,
yeah.
don't be afraid to ask. That's right. The
Yeah.
worst they can say is no.
Say is
I
no.
think yeah.
See,
Yeah.
moms, we say the same thing. We must have the same playbook, right?
You have to have the courage to ask.
I agree. I agree. And the most important lesson you've learned through all this.
I think I've learned that uh, just to take the risk. Obviously, there are you have to weigh your risks and the pros and cons and all these things. But I'm on the side of just of being bold and taking the risk. I think life that has this inherent safety net built around us that, you know, I, at that time that I was talking about earlier, when I was navigating through some significant
Mm.
changes in my life and having to make a big shift, I went on this journey. I decided to make this challenge for myself that throughout a year, for every month, I would do one thing that
Ah,
made me nervous, got me out of my comfort zone, and that really challenged me. And one of those months, I decided to do the flying trapeze. I talked a girlfriend into going to the circus school with me, and we climbed up onto the trapeze and took that flying trapeze. And it was a terrifying thing. I can remember vividly standing on that platform, my knees trembling, my hands shaking as I grasped onto that bar.
and
But ultimately,
literally leaping
yeah,
over.
you got to take the leap, but then you fly, and it's the most amazing sensation. And once you do it once, it gets easier. You take that terrifying step, but I got back up and did it again. I did it two or three times, and it got easier every time and more thrilling and more exciting. And I had to remember at the end of the day, I was on a harness, and there was a net underneath me, and I wasn't in danger. But it's often so much the fear is just in our heads, and so we got to get make sure that there is a safety net. What's going to catch you?
We should point that out too, right? Don't go trapezing without a safety net, just in
But
case,
yeah,
right?
but
Yeah.
yeah, courage is this muscle that you have to build. Like the more you do it, the more you get, and doing the things that make you fear, that make you scared. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get, the more courageous you get, and the easier it becomes to take bigger risks.
Okay, now the fun part. We're going to do some rapid fire. Are you ready, Sarah?
I'm
Put my
ready,
glasses
ready or
on for
not.
this one. Okay. You describe yourself in one word.
Bold.
Ah. What did you dream of being when you were a child?
A marine biologist.
Ah,
It's one of those things that I was passionate about, but not good at.
we could fit it in there somewhere. If you had to choose between money and fame, which would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't really need either, but I would say maybe money because it opens access to doing other things. Yeah.
Do you tend to wake up early or stay up late and work late? What are you, an early bird?
I'm not an early bird. No, I'm not a morning person.
If you were writing your own autobiography, what would the title be?
I would say raising a revolution.
Wow. If aside from the necessities, what's one thing that you could not go without?
Well, I think I would say love. Like love is, I mean, in many ways, love is a necessity, but the love of my family and friends is what, at the end of the day, this is terribly cliche, but that's what I need most in my life.
What's one thing that you always wanted to do in life, but you haven't yet?
That's a good one. I know this is supposed to be rapid
Trapeze.
fire, but
It's okay. It's a
I've
slower
done
rapid.
I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro.
Wow.
Mm.
Okay. If you had a theme song that played every time you walked into a room, what would it be?
I want to see you be brave. Uh,
Sarah,
yeah,
by Sarah, right?
yeah, by
Sarah.
Sarah. Yes. It's a good theme
Uh,
song.
what's one thing you want but cannot buy with money?
Mm. Joy.
If you could change one thing about the world, what would you change? Ooh, I'm back.
Um, One thing that every child is loved and safe.
What's your favorite entrepreneurial or empowerment book?
Mm. I would say Daring Greatly by Brene Brown.
I love her. I love the
Mhm.
quote about the flame.
Yeah.
Find non-flame blower outers. Surround yourself with those people.
Yeah, she's got so many good quotes, but that Daring Greatly book is an amazing one, and it was really pivotal in making some big changes in my life.
What's the most recent investment you've made in yourself?
Not a financial investment, but it's just the investment of time, making sure that I have time every day just to get some physical movement in my day. I don't do it every day. It's harder when my son is not in school, but just
Yes.
yeah, choosing to put time into my day for physical activity for my own wellness.
What's the one myth about your profession that you would want to debunk that doesn't exist?
I think one myth I'd like to debunk is that caring for children is an act of charity. I think it's an act of
Oh.
justice and an obligation that we have as a society. So yeah,
Ah, that's
it
that's
shouldn't be.
interesting.
I mean, I run a charity, so of course we rely on charitable support, but I really don't think. I think that the caring for children is just a moral obligation.
It's our duty, I think,
It's
isn't
our
it?
duty. Yes, yeah.
If you agree to have children, it's your job, it's your duty. It's hard, but you have to do it. I think
As
that's
parents, but
that's
I think there's a collective social contract that we all have a duty to look after all of our children. You may be a parent, but you may not. You may be a business leader or a government leader. We all have a duty to ensure that our kids survive and thrive.
what's the one thing you learned about yourself through your journey so far?
Uh, I think to just to be comfortable defying expectations. I'm a relatively quiet. I'm an introvert. I'm a shy, fairly relatively quiet person, and I think to use that as a bit of a advantage because people sometimes underestimate what I'm going to do or what I'm capable of, and so that surprise factor can sometimes work in my favor.
So, if you could sit down with one person and have an hour conversation with anyone alive or dead, who would it be and why?
I think there are a lot of different people I would pick, but if I could have had a conversation with Archbishop Desmond Tutu, he would be someone I would
Ah,
have loved to spend time with. Just an incredible leader with a strong moral compass who challenged great atrocities, around apartheid in South Africa, but issues around the world. And he did it with this great sense of joy. He confronted really, really tough issues. Some of the greatest issues of our time. And yet he was known for always just being joyful and have this great big belly laugh. And I just would have loved to have spent some time in his company.
You'd be contagious for sure.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
joy.
My mom got to meet him many years ago, but I didn't
Wow.
facilitate. He came to our church, and I wasn't able to be a part of it. But it was, yeah, I would have loved to be able to spend some time in his company.
If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, whether it be about business or personal, what would that advice be?
I think I wish I had learned earlier just to be bolder. I think, I was a pretty, I did what I was passionate about. I made a big difference, but there were times when I felt, particularly because I was shy or maybe sometimes got passed over for leadership opportunities. I wish I'd just raised my hand more. It's not that I don't have any great regrets when I look back at my childhood, but I just wish when I wanted opportunities that I'd had the courage just to raise my hand and say, hey, I could do that, or, just to ask for the opportunities that I wanted.
And you're doing that now.
I am. I found my voice in using it, and I hope more little girls have the courage to do that younger in life.
Well, thank you for making it your mission to take care of children and to put them first, for elevating, educating, and empowering, because we all rise by lifting others.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the Women's Empowerment Awards for all that you do to shine a light on women and to celebrate the tremendous power we have to make a difference in our families and in our country. So thank you.